Because of its harsh climate and remoteness from the center, Tohoku, Japan's northeastern region, has long been regarded as the country's backwater. Along with that reputation comes a set of unflattering stereotypes about its people: that they are taciturn, stubborn, somewhat enigmatic. In other words, rather than speaking their minds, they grit their teeth, bottle up their feelings and go about their business in gloomy silence. But those very traits were seen as an admirable asset in the immediate aftermath of the 11th of March 2011 disaster that hit Tohoku's coastal communities, when a disastrous earthquake was followed by a tsunami, then a nuclear meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi reactors. It has been more than 10 years since the March 2011 Tohoku earthquake. It was a magnitude 9.0 earthquake that triggered a tsunami on March 11, killing almost 16,000 people in Japan. The devastation caused by the tidal wave that reached 133 feet high and went 6 miles inland was cataclysmic. In the aftermath, survivors desperately searched for their loved ones among the wreckage. Today, over 2,500 people are still listed as missing. After the disaster, many spiritual phenomena were recorded in this land. Wandering phantoms. Understandably, such tragic levels of loss are difficult for the survivors to cope with. However, a study conducted by Yuka Kudo, a sociology student at Tohoku Gakuin University, suggests that it is not only the living who are struggling to make sense of the tragedy, but also the dead. Using interviews conducted with over 100 taxi drivers throughout the eastern part of the country, Kudo reports that many have reported picking up ghost passengers. Even when there's been no rain, the cab drivers have been hailed by soaking wet passengers, believed to be ghosts of victims still drenched from the disaster. One cab driver in Ishinomaki picked up a woman with soaking wet hair, despite the sunny skies, who asked to be taken to an area of the city now abandoned due to the tsunami. After a moment of silence, she asked, "Have I died?" And when he turned back to look at her, there was no one there. While another tells the tale of a man who asked the driver to take him to a mountain before he vanished. In a similar situation, another cabbie picked up a young male passenger, roughly age 20, who directed him to another part of the district. This area was equally devoid of buildings and, once again, the driver was shocked to learn that his fare had disappeared. The supposed riders involved in the account, which many compares to the "phantom hitchhiker" urban legend, were generally young people, and Kudo has a theory about that. Young people feel strongly chagrined, at their deaths, when they cannot meet people they love, she said. As they want to convey their bitterness, they may have chosen taxis, which are like private rooms, as a medium to do so. Kudo's investigation into these incidents showed that in every situation, the taxi drivers legitimately believed they had picked up an actual passenger, as all started their meters and most noted the experience in their company logbooks. Yuka also found that none of the drivers reported any fear during their encounters with the ghost passengers. Each felt it was a positive experience, in which the soul of the deceased was finally able to achieve some closure. While many of them have learned to avoid picking up passengers along those places. On its own, Kudo's study is interesting, but cab drivers are not the only ones in Japan who have reported seeing ghosts in the tsunami-devastated towns. The police have received hundreds of reports from people who see ghosts where housing developments used to be and long lines of phantoms queued outside of former shopping centers. While many have witnessed figures walking past their house in the evening, as darkness fell. Mostly, they were parents and children, or a group of young friends, or a grandfather and a child. The people were all covered in mud. However, the police have not found any concrete evidence of such events. They have begun collaborating with exorcists in the area. Whether one believes in the supernatural is beside the point. The point, according to many local priests who exorcised many tsunami-induced ghosts, is that people really believed they were seeing them. Tohoku's ghost problem became so pervasive that university academics started cataloging the stories, while priests found themselves called on repeatedly to quell unhappy spirits that could, in extreme cases, possess the living. Post-disaster Tohoku came to be overpopulated with ghosts, with multiple reports of sightings. This, some believe, was inevitable as the tsunami took the lives of so many people unprepared to relinquish their worldly attachments. Ghost stories were common. A dead woman would visit old friends in their temporary housing and sit down for a cup of tea, leaving dampness on the cushion she was imagined to have been sitting on. Everyone's in the same boat, so they don't like to seem self-indulgent. But when they start talking, and when you listen to them, and sense their gritted teeth and their suffering, all the suffering they can't and won't express, in time the tears come, and they flow without end. Haltingly, apologetically, then with increasing fluency, the survivors spoke of the terror of the wave, the pain of bereavement, and their fears for the future. They also talked about encounters with the supernatural. They described sightings of ghostly strangers, friends and neighbors, and dead loved ones. They reported hauntings at home, at work, in offices and public places, on the beaches and in the ruined towns. The experiences ranged from eerie dreams and feelings of vague unease to cases, like that of Takeshi Ono, of outright possession. It was not just the spirits of men and women that had possessed him, but also animals, cats and dogs and other beasts that had drowned with their masters. A young man complained of pressure on his chest at night, as if some creature was straddling him as he slept. A teenage girl spoke of a fearful figure who squatted in her house. A middle-aged man hated to go out in the rain, because of the eyes of the dead, which stared out at him from puddles. A civil servant in Soma visited a devastated stretch of coast and saw a solitary woman in a scarlet dress far from the nearest road or house, with no means of transport in sight. When he looked for her again, she had disappeared. A fire station in Tagaho received calls to places where all the houses had been destroyed by the tsunami. The crews went out to the ruins anyway, prayed for the spirits of those who had died, and the ghostly calls ceased. Religious people all argue about whether these are really the spirits of the dead. One resident said, "I don't get into it, because what matters is that people are seeing them, and in these circumstances, after this disaster, it is perfectly natural. So many died, and all at once. At home, at work, at school, the wave came in and they were gone. The dead had no time to prepare themselves. The people left behind had no time to say goodbye. Those who lost their families, and those who died, they have strong feelings of attachment. The dead are attached to the living, and those who have lost them are attached to the dead. It's inevitable that there are ghosts. The tsunami been the greatest disaster of post-war Japan. And yet the pain did not announce itself, it dug underground and burrowed deep. Journalists reporting from the disaster zone commended the resilience of Tohoku people, marveling at the restraint demonstrated by survivors, many of whom had lost everything. Uncomplaining, they organized themselves at makeshift evacuation centers, queued to receive rationed food and took care of the weak and wounded. The tsunami had a devastating toll on agriculture, fisheries, and other local industries. In the decade since the disaster, projects focused on practical tasks like removing sediment, rejuvenating salt-damaged soils, and repairing irrigation and drainage systems have succeeded in restoring 94% of damaged farmland. Similar progress has been made in returning fisheries to their previous capacity, with 100% of fishing ports and related facilities being restored as of the end of 2020. As communities have rebuilt, tourism, particularly from overseas, has steadily improved. In 2019, 1.68 million foreign visitors stayed at hotels and other lodgings in the 6 prefectures that make up Tohoku.